Hey everyone, how are you today? Happy Friday! If it is Friday in your part of the world, it is definitely Friday here in Sydney. Beautiful, stunning, gorgeous day. Look at me, I've even got a little bit of shoulder exposure happening because it's a gorgeous day out there. Gorgeous day in my kitchen as well, I have to say. I've had a wonderful couple of days creating some incredible recipes for us to be having soon. One of them I delivered to you this morning. If you have been on Bridget's Kitchen on Facebook this morning, you will have seen that I posted my healthy sausage roll recipe this morning, and it is doing amazingly well. It has got lots and lots of people very, very excited about the potential or the possibility of them being able to make some healthy sausage rolls. Not sure about you guys, but I grew up eating sausage rolls. I literally did. I've eaten really big ones on the way to school, huge ones. I've eaten little tiny ones at a party. I've also made them throughout my career. Sausage rolls always tends to be a bit of a fixture because they're delicious, let's be honest. They are delicious, but not only are they delicious, but they are also pretty easy to make as well, homemade, and there is nothing like homemade. Hence why I have been inundated with requests since posting that sausage roll recipe at 6 o'clock this morning, with people asking me to please do a cooking class or a master class on how to make my rough puff pastry. Now I've given in that recipe. If you haven't already gotten the recipe, Mahei, are you able to throw up a link for the sausage roll recipe so people can download it, please? In the sausage roll recipe, firstly I have the recipe for the filling of the sausage roll, and then I have a bonus recipe to attach to it, which is this one that I have in front of me here, my rough puff pastry, gluten-free of course, and sugar-free as well. So that is included today in that sausage roll recipe, which is so exciting. You get two for the price of one. In fact, you get two for free because you don't pay for it, which is even better, right? You just got to go and download it. So the rough puff pastry, I've given you two options in that sausage roll. You can make my pastry from scratch, and of course that does require a little bit more effort, which I'm sure you're going, yes, you know, thinking about pastry making, it's not the easiest thing to do. But it kind of is, because I'm giving you my rough puff pastry recipe. But the other alternative, and I'm going to show you guys what the other alternative is, it's in the freezer, which is just here. If you don't want to make your own pastry, you can actually go and buy pre-rolled packets of gluten-free pastry, puff pastry, that you can, yes, use for sausage rolls. But on inspecting the ingredients list on the back of this, I got this from Coles here in Sydney. On inspecting the ingredients list, there's a whole ton of stuff in that. There is lots and lots of things. I'll start with, of course, there's rice flour, maize starch, modified starch, soy flour, vegetable gum, thickener, water, margarine, palm fat, oil, water, salt, emulsifiers, antioxidants, soya, preservative, acidity. I could literally, the list of ingredients is about that long at the back there. So you can go, if you just want to be gluten free, you can go to Coles or go to your supermarket, check out the freezer section. Chances are they have some of this in the freezer ready for you, right? But if you have a little bit of time, and you don't have to invest a lot of time, and you have a little bit of, like, you know, you want to get your cook on, I would definitely suggest you attempt making your own rough puff pastry, because it's not that hard. It's just a little bit time consuming. But instead of having a list of ingredients this long, I have flour, xanthan gum, salt, butter, water. You know, there's like, and an egg. There's no ingredients. And yes, if you're wondering, you do need to use butter to make this recipe, but that's okay because it's a good fat. It's really good for us, and we're only having small portions, aren't we? I don't expect you to eat the entire bit of puff pastry on your own. You're going to share this with family and friends, so it's okay to have a little bit of butter in your diet. So here we go, down to the recipe. As I was saying, it's not hard to make, but it is a little bit time consuming. So the first thing we're going to do, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you down here to the bench so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to be making this today in my little machine here. This is my KitchenAid. I've had it for many, many years. As you can see, she's well used, well loved, but it is an industrial strength. This is a professional series KitchenAid. It's been in almost every single one of my commercial kitchens for as long as I can remember. So I am going to be using this, but you can actually make it with by hand. So even what I'm doing in the machine, you can use make it by hand. Literally, I mean use your hands. Just clean them first. And I've got that recipe in the puff pastry recipe as well. I've got machine method and I've got make by hand method. So you can do either way. But we're going to be I'm going to be using the machine today. And I've got the bowl of my machine right here, and I'm putting it straight onto my chopping board. Onto my my scales, because I'm going to weigh all the ingredients straight into here. Save with the cleaning up is what I always like to say. So the first thing that we need to do. And by the way, I have already weighed off my butter, and my butter is here in the freezer, getting nice and cold. So that's the first thing. You need to cut up your butter. I think it's like 225 grams of butter that I have here. Cut up your butter and into quite large chunks and pop that into the freezer. 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. You just want the butter to be really, really cold. It is literally, I could probably knock someone out with that if I threw it at their head. They would potentially end up on the ground. So it's hard. It's like, it's hard butter, yeah? Hard butter. Cut it up, that's already done, in the freezer for about 15, 20 minutes before you actually start cooking, just to get it nice and cold. So that's our butter there. But I'm gonna measure our flour straight into the my little bowl here. And the type of flour that I'm using today is an all-purpose gluten-free flour. Now I get this one here from Aldi. It is not expensive. This is a 500 gram box, and it's just a couple of bucks. It's like $3 or something like that. So if you have an Aldi in your area, if you're in Australia, go get the gluten-free flour from Aldi. Nothing wrong with it, and it is almost half the price of other supermarkets, and it works just as well when it comes to pastry making. So this is just there's just plain flour, yeah. There's no added raising agents in this whatsoever. And I'm just going to measure out my flour. I need about 280 grams, which is just under 10 ounces of flour. And just, like I said, measure it straight into the bowl. Just makes life so much easier when we do stuff like that. We can go back into the little box. I'm also going to add some salt. Now in the recipe I have a teaspoon of Himalayan salt, but you don't have to add that much. This makes quite a salty or quite a flavoursome dough. And it's perfect for sausage rolls. About a teaspoon of salt. But if you were going to then make your pastry into a sweet pie, just add a pinch of salt. You don't have to add that much salt. It's completely up to you. Play around with it. So that goes in there. The next thing that we're going to be adding is I know it's back to front. So can you guys read back to front? It says xanthan gum. Now xanthan gum is a thickener or a binder. And this is going to help to keep our pastry together when we make it. It is vital. You cannot leave that step out, yeah? Xanthan gum is vital because it needs to hold it. Right now, remember, we've taken all the gluten out of the flour. We're using flour that has no gluten. And what that basically means is that, think of gluten like glue. It binds things together naturally. But it's also one of the things that makes us feel a little bit unwell, me definitely personally. So I remove all the gluten from my diet, but I still need the pastry to stick together. That's what xanthan gum does for us. So it is, you can buy that in a lot of really good supermarkets now in the health food section, or definitely available in the health food store as well. So xanthan gum, if you're nowhere near a health food store and your supermarket doesn't stock it, go online and buy it online, most definitely. So we're going to be adding into here 1.5 teaspoons of our xanthan gum goes in. 1.5. That's going to give us a really nice bind. Remember, it's a binding or a thickening agent, and a little goes a long way. So that is now in there. I then am going to come over to my little machine, and I'm going to bring you guys because I want you guys to see what's happening down here. This is all part of what's going on. You need to be as close to the action as possible. So let's click our bowl into place like that. I am then going to take up one of these little doodakis. If you own a machine, if you like a cake mixer and you've never ever used this, or you've wondered what this is a dough hook. This is for making dough basically, or pastry. So this is perfect. If you have this kind of funny shaped little thing as part of your cake mixer and always wondered, what does that do? Well, now you know. It's for making dough. It's a dough hook. So the dough hook goes in, push my machine up, and we're just going to give it a little bit. I'm not sure if you guys can, you can kind of see what's happening in there. Give it a little bit of a bit of a mix, nothing too major. Okay, that's the first step. The next step is we're going to be taking our butter, which is here. Remember our ice cold butter. And now that that was just a stir. You could probably do that with a wooden spoon. You don't even have to do it in here. But now that that's all mixed through, just going to give it a bit of a scrape down on the sides. I'm going to take up my big chunks of butter. And this may seem very counterintuitive. Hard rocks of butter, big slices are now going in there. But remember, this is rough puff. So we're not being as perfect as we would be if we were using gluten. We can be a little bit, you know, think about the recipe name, rough. You can be a bit rough with your pastry. So just those hard blocks of butter are now in there. And give them and this is weird, I know. And you can hear the noise it's making as it's trying to just break up those pieces of butter. This is where your fingers come in handy, where you might just pull the butter apart. Or, too noisy, come back down here. Come back down here, too noisy. Yeah, that was too noisy, right? Come right back down here. You can still see, yeah, that's good enough. This is where you would actually go with your fingers and pull it apart a little bit. Or you would use one of these machines just to break up those pieces of butter. Because what you're wanting here is you're wanting the butter to be broken up but not too small, if that makes any sense to you guys whatsoever. So you're just literally going through, God, that's really, can you hear that? It's a really hard butter. What you're wanting to do is just to go through and break up those pieces of butter without actually, you don't want them to be too small, because what's happening with the butter here is we're trying to incorporate it into the flour so we get layers of puff pastry. And we definitely don't want to do that by having really soft butter, because it's going to be really hard to get those layers. So can you hear the butter snapping? That's how hard it is. I'm snapping it with my fingers. And if you are making this by hand, this is pretty much exactly what you would do. You would go through, of course, the butter's going to start to melt a little bit using your hands, because there's heat in your hands, and that's definitely going to help the butter. But you're not wanting the pieces to be too small. You're actually wanting them to be quite large at this stage. So right now, I have, can I show you guys? Can you see the butter chunks? They're quite large. They're like that, which is perfect. I'm then just going to pop this back into our little machine and give it another bit of a go. Get a little bit of a go around. Breaking up that butter just a little bit, or doing it by hand. This is a really good recipe for the kids to get involved, because they get to get their hands dirty and they get to be a part of it, which is really, really nice. Okay, chunks of butter, I will show you the size. They went from big ones to about that big, yeah? That's a piece of butter right there. Perfect. The next stage is we're going to add the liquid to our machine. So the liquid that I have today, and I'm only using water, but I'm using very, very cold water. So the water I've actually had in the fridge, like ice water, literally. And it's actually turned into ice. It went a little bit too cold. It's actually, I don't want it that cold. Alright, alright, we just break through the ice. It's not too bad. Just ice cold, not ice, is ideal here. But don't you love it? That, yeah. Oh, you can hear the ice. That's actually a good thing as well. Alright, so, okay, here we go. We have actual water now and not just a block of ice, which is good. So, ice water is in there. Nice and icy, which we definitely have today. I can honestly tell you that that's really icy. I am then going to take up, and how much ice water have I've got about 100 mils, which is 3.5 fluid ounces of water in there, really cold water. I may not use all of that, it depends, but that's the maximum sort of liquid I'm going to use. I'm now going to crack in a whole egg to go straight into our ice water. Come down here so you guys can see. Straight into our ice water. a bit of a fork, and let's just give that a little bit of a mix up. Now you have icy, eggy water, which is great. Remember, this is rough puff pastry. Everything we're doing here is rough. And this is what I love about when you're dealing with gluten-free flour. It's quite forgiving. It is quite forgiving. So we can be a little bit rough like that. That's absolutely fine. All right, eggs in there. The next thing we're going to add is potentially the very last ingredient. Actually, it is the last ingredient in the recipe, and this is a little bit of a freshly squeezed lemon juice. These are once again from my friend Radika's wonderful tree, and this is a small lemon. It's only half. This is a small lemon from her tree, and we're just going to squeeze in about half a tablespoon of fresh lemon juice. Fresh is always best. I know you can buy those little yellow bottles in the supermarket with not fresh lemon juice. Please guys, if you can get fresh lemon juice, it is always going to taste way better. So that is our wet ingredients. That's our dry ingredients. So we keep them separate at this stage, but we're about to incorporate them. And incorporating them is as easy as going over to here, and I'm going to pour in, without the ice, about 80 mils. So not quite all of the liquid is going to go in there. I'm going to keep some back just in case I need to add it later. So that is now in. Our machine is going to go on again, and we're going to begin to incorporate the liquid with the dry ingredients and start to continue to break up that butter of ours. It's going to look really odd. I want you guys to see in here. I wish you could. I gotta show you. It's really important. Alright. Can you see what's happening? It's beginning to break up. It's not come together. It doesn't even look like a dough right now. That's okay. That is exactly what's supposed to be happening. Don't worry if you're doing this and go, oh my god, it doesn't even look like pastry. It'll get there. Alright, here we go again. The butter's getting smaller now. It's going into smaller pieces. And the liquid's beginning to incorporate, which is great. I'm going to add some more of my little mixture in there as well, just so it starts to come together. But it's better to go slowly with liquid. Start with less and you can always add more. You can't take away the liquid once it's added. So I always start, and I'm a little bit cautious, and then I add more liquid as it's going along. Because what I'm trying to do is create, obviously, a pastry. Right, now, if you were doing this by hand, let's now do that step. Because I'm pretty happy with what stage it's at now in my machine. But I'm going to transfer to a glass bowl so you guys can see exactly what's going on here. So, the butter is broken down a little bit more. So I'm just going to dump it straight into that bowl so you guys can see how kind of raggedy it is. Can you see that? It's kind of looking quite raggedy. That is exactly what we want. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue. You could, if you're doing this in the machine, keep it going. And what would then happen is the butter would begin to break up and become more manageable. But if you're doing this all by hand, and for a lot of you, you may be doing it by hand because you don't own a machine that has a dough hook. So you'll be doing this all by hand. So this is where clean hands and warm fingertips come into their own, because you're able to really get in there. And this is where the fun is. You get to squeeze the dough, you get to break up the flour, and now we're actually beginning to get this really kind of loose, raggedy, scraggly sort of dough forming, and this is exactly what we want. And the way you're going to achieve this, remember, is to have that icy cold butter and that icy cold water as well. It's going to help us really to get a nice pastry happening. So I'm really happy with this. This is what you're wanting at this stage, yeah? Exactly like that. No, it looks like nothing. And you're like, what? Are you sure, Bridge? Are you sure that's what I want? Yes, I'm absolutely 100% sure that that's what we want. So I'm going to clean my bench down a little bit, just the wet stuff. I'm going to grab some of my flour here, just a little bit. Very lightly dust my bench. And the best way to do it, to dust your bench, is to hold the flour in your fingertips and then flick. And you get a very light dusting instead of a dump of flour. We don't want too much flour here. We just want to make sure it doesn't stick to the bench. And now very unceremoniously dump the mixture onto your bench. And we're going to start to work on our bench and bring this together to create a very weird looking but slightly cohesive dough. So I'm squeezing the butter at the same time, bringing it all together. And what I'm trying to create here, and this really, if you think about it, this hasn't actually taken me that long to do, right? This has only taken, I'm only probably, 10 minutes in at this stage, and we already have the beginnings or the makings of what is going to look like a pretty good pastry. So squeezing everything together. If it's too sticky, this is when you take more flour, yeah? And just lightly sprinkle your bench. If it is too crumbly and you're not able to do this at this stage, that is where you take a little bit more water, a tablespoon at a time, and you add it and then you mix the dough. But do all those two things. If it's too crumbly, you add more liquid. If it's too wet, you add more flour, but do it in small increments. Because if you were suddenly just dump a whole quarter of a cup of water on this, you would have pastry soup. And I haven't tried pastry soup yet. I don't know what it's like, but I'm imagining it's not that great. So we want to avoid that. So we just go gently. Because remember, the absolute rule of thumb when it comes to baking or cooking in general is you can always add more. But once you've added it, it's very hard to take it away. We have a question. Yes, Maha'i?
Question from Megan Walker. What's the flour?
It is a all-purpose gluten-free flour. That's all it is. Nice and plain, nothing added to it. You can buy that from the supermarket. Don't worry about the brand. Just get one that's well priced for you, whatever area you are in. All right, that's the flour we're using. So, look, right? I have pastry. Well, kind of, a bit rough. That's okay. Next stage. Get yourself one of these babies. Not to knock anyone out, unless they've been really, no, don't knock anyone out, no. It's actually it could be used as a weapon, but it's actually a weapon against pastry being in a big lump. That's how it's a weapon. So we want to now, I'm going to put a little bit more flour onto that bench, just a little bit. Remember flicking with the flour. And then we're going to start to roll this out. Well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to knock it to begin with, because it's weird and it's crumbly, but that's exactly what it's supposed to be. Always bear in mind, it's a rough puff pastry. So just kind of bang it on your bench. But I'm trying to sort of develop a bit of a square here. Because the thing when you're making pastry, and if it starts to stick to your rolling pin, just get some flour in your hand and just do that, dust it off. But always just small pieces of flour. Look, I'm banging it, I'm not really rolling. Got these lovely big lumps of flour and of butter in here, can you see it? It is just wonderful. In fact, I'm gonna make the call now and say this is one of the best ones I've ever made, which is interesting because I'm doing this while I'm talking. So I don't normally make the best I've ever made while I'm talking, but I'm gonna grab one more bit of equipment. Just wait there for a second, I've got to find it. It could be in many drawers, it could also be in the dishwasher. Yes, it is. I call this my bulldozer, also known as a pastry scraper, and see what I can do with that. You can get plastic ones, you can get metal ones. I prefer the metal one, just because. Oh, sorry guys. I've got another question.
Kathy's making hers now.
Oh, good on you, Kathy. She's doing it as we're talking. Well done, Kathy. Right. So I have got the pastry here. My little pastry scraper is just helping to take it off the bench. I'm then just going to give it a bit of a twist, and I'm going to go back to my rolling pin. Remember, we're trying to create a square, and I'll show you why soon. The square is actually really important. Not making a round, we're making a square, because this is how we're going to start to create the turns in our pastry to start to do what is called laminating. And I'm using my hands, I'm creating that square. It doesn't have to be a fancy square, it can be completely rough. Pastry scraper goes in underneath, helps to pick it up off the bench, and then we're able to do a turn, yeah? So now as we're turning, and one thing you'll notice, and this is something that I learned from many great chefs that I've worked with, is we never roll dough that way. We only, or pastry, whatever it is, you only roll forward and back. that one direction. Only in one direction. Don't know why, but that's what I was taught. And all the great chefs do it, so I guess that's how it is. I don't know why. And pastry scraper goes under the bench. Well, it's feeling a little bit sticky now, so you know what I might do? Give it a bit of flip. So, a bit of flour. As soon as it feels sticky, a little bit of flour onto the bench, and then we give it a little ready to do the flip. Ugh. Oh, it's rough on that side too, but that's good, because now we have our little rolling pin. Oh, everything's sticking, everything's sticking. A bit more flour there. Just a bit, remember, onto your rolling pin, and it's going to get messy. This is why this is such a great one for kids. Kids love getting messy. Let them get messy with healthy food, I say. Right, now that I've got it at this point, I'm going to do one last little turn, because I want it to be almost like a book sitting in front of me. So now I have an open book. I'm going to close that book, and this is called doing a fold. So taking one side as carefully as you can. It's going to look weird, but trust me here. Taking one side and folding it to the middle. Yeah? Fold it to the middle as much as you can. If you've got pieces falling off, stick them back on. Like, just literally do some surgery. There you go. Give it a bit of a loving tap. And then I'm going to take the other side and I'm going to meet it in the middle. Now this is known as doing your first fold. Traditional in any type of puff pastry that you're making is we are creating what is known as a book fold. So I have just created the very first book fold. What I need to do now is I'm going to turn it and we're going to start all over again. So I've got a little bit of flour here, just in case I'm going to need it, and I probably am. I'm then going to use my pastry scraper. Or you could use, if you don't have one of these, you could use what you use to flip eggs, you could use that as well. Just to make sure I can move it, and then I'm going to take this. Imagine that's 12 o'clock, that's 6 o'clock, that's 3 o'clock, and that's 9 o'clock. So I'm going to take this now, and I'm going to turn it to 3 o'clock. Yeah? And I'm going to go back to my little rolling pin, sticky rolling pin, and I'm going to start to, in the flour, roll it out again. A little bit more flour. If it's sticky, just keep on adding a bit more flour. It's absolutely fine. And we're going to start to roll it out again. Now we're going to do exactly the same fold. So, remember, it's like a book. I'm going to take one side of it and bring it to the middle. Just like that. I'm then going to take the other side and I'm going to fold it in. We've now done our second fold. More flour. I didn't add how much flour you're going to need for dusting. That is all going to be determined by how absorbent your flour is. So this time I'm going to take it and I'm going to turn it another to 3 o'clock again. Or you could turn it to 6 o'clock, it's completely up to you. But we're going to turn it to 3 o'clock and we're going to do exactly the same roll. And what you'll notice is the more times you fold and you roll, your dough will really begin to look quite cohesive. It really starts to come together once you've done more than one or two of these folds. You start to go, I get it now. The butter's melting. That's why we use cold butter, because if I was doing this with warm butter, I would have a puddle of butter now on the bench, which we don't want. Okay, taking that, scraping under. We're going to do the same type of fold here. Once again, bring it to the middle and bring it to the middle again. Yeah? I'm now just going to keep on dusting. If it feels sticky, remember butter is very sticky, we just keep on dusting. And take it up. I'm going to turn it again. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. Now you need to do this particular action 6 times in total. You will be folding and turning, exactly the same process 6 times. And as you're doing it, you're sprinkling over more flour as the butter begins to melt and get quite warm and sticks to your bench. Sprinkle over more flour, on your very dirty, messy little rolling pin, but that's fine too. Yeah. So that was my 6 o'clock turn, 12 to 6. And if it's a really long piece that like what I've got now, here's another fold you can do. As you scrape up, remember, bring it to the center, just like that. Fold up, bring it to the center. And I know what you're thinking now. That looks rough, but that's exactly how it should look. Because remember that this is rough puff pastry. So you will do those folds, and I think that is probably the technique that people may struggle with the most, is just making sure that they get those folds right. But guys, if you're only turning from 12 to 3 or 12 to 4 o'clock, don't panic, because you're going to get this in the end of the day. Provided you do 6 folds, 6 turns, you're going to get this coming to you. And check that out, I didn't even do the full 6. I could absolutely do more folds and turns. In fact, I'll do one more with you guys just now, just to show you how excited I am by, look, pastry. You've made pastry. Isn't it amazing? From that, you know, raggedy, scraggly looking bit of dough, you have now created your very, very own gluten-free, sugar-free puff pastry that only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ingredients, and one of those ingredients is water. Right? You've made your own. And the feeling you get, here we go again, we're doing our flip, look at that. The feeling you get from making your own and knowing exactly what is inside is way more satisfying than anything I can possibly imagine. I love the fact that I'm able to make this with you guys right now, and we have a rough piece of beautiful pastry. Now, once you've done your 6 turns, what you will then do is you will cover it with cling film, and you'll pop that in the fridge for about 30 minutes just to let it come together. That's before you roll it out and to make whatever it is you're making, pies, sausage rolls, whatever it is. And as you guys know, I made sausage rolls yesterday. Would you like to see? I have a few left over that weren't devoured. They weren't devoured this morning, which is strange. I think everyone's holding out for something. Oh, where are they? Could you, Grandma, could you? They're just over there. Grandma's running. You're going to see beautiful lady in her beautiful flowery dress walking past us. She's running to there she goes to the table. And she's about to, thank you, Grandma. Wonderful, here we go. So, here's some I made earlier. Now these were made yesterday. I'll show you the differences. So here we have a sausage roll made from my rough puff pastry. The smell, the flavor, unbelievable. Hence why I gave you both recipes, for not just to make your own, but also, doors are slamming everywhere. This is one that I made using the supermarket one. Sure, you know it's a lot easier, but there is no comparison between that one there and that one there. The flavor in here is amazing. So there you go, guys, a little puff pastry class for you. Bridget's rough puff pastry ready to go. Remember that you can make pies, you can make sausage rolls. If you want a sweet one, leave out the salt. It is versatile and it is wonderful, and I hope you make it and enjoy it, and let me know how you get on, please. Don't forget, you can also purchase more of my healthy treats from Bridget's Healthy Treats ebook. I think Mahay's going to throw up a link for you guys as well, but there you have it. Enjoy. It's Friday, long weekend. Wonderful. Let's get into it. All right, guys, take care. Talk soon. Have a great weekend. Bye.